The blade pressed against her throat was warm from someone else's blood. Amara could feel the tremor in the soldier's hand, see the fear glazing his eyes behind the imperial mask. He didn't want to kill her, but orders were orders, and the Korean Empire did not forgive betrayal. Especially not betrayal that looked like hers, an African woman standing in the rebel stronghold, her hands stained with gunpowder, love letters from the Emperor's own son hidden in her coat pocket. The letters that would condemn them both. Please, the soldier whispered in Korean, a language she now understood better than her own mother tongue. Please don't make me do this. 6 months earlier, Amara had been nobody. A translator at the imperial court in Seoul, hired because the empire was expanding its reach into African territories and needed someone who could navigate both worlds. She was invisible, useful, safe. She had learned to make herself small in the glittering halls of power, to bow her head just right, to speak only when spoken to. The Korean Empire had conquered half the world through military brilliance and ruthless efficiency, and she was merely a tool in their vast machine. She had never expected to catch the eye of Lee Jun, the crown prince, the empire's most celebrated military commander, the man they called the Iron Tiger. Their first meeting wasn't romantic. It was raining, one of those Seoul downpours that felt like the sky was angry, and she had been rushing through the palace courtyard with an armful of documents when she collided with someone, papers scattered like white birds across the wet stones. She dropped to her knees immediately, bowing, apologizing in rapid Korean, expecting punishment. Instead, a hand appeared in her field of vision, long fingers, a simple silver ring. "Let me help you," a voice said. When she looked up, water streaming down her face, she found herself staring into the eyes of the crown prince himself. She had seen him before, of course, from a distance during ceremonies, always surrounded by guards and advisors. Up close, he was different than she expected. Tired, there were shadows under his eyes that no amount of royal composure could hide. They gathered the papers together in silence. When they finished, he didn't immediately walk away. "You're Amara," he said. Not a question. The translator from Nairobi. "Yes, Your Highness." She kept her eyes down. "The documents you translated last week, the trade agreements with the East African territories, your notes were insightful. You understand not just the words, but the intentions behind them." She didn't know what to say. Princes didn't notice translators. "They certainly didn't compliment them. I requested you specifically for my next assignment," he continued. "We're negotiating with the resistance leaders in Uganda. I need someone who understands both the language and the culture. Someone who can help me find a path that doesn't end in more bloodshed." That surprised her. The Iron Tiger wanting to avoid bloodshed? The man who had crushed rebellions in Indonesia and Argentina and Egypt. "I'll do my best, Your Highness." He finally met her eyes fully. For just a moment, she saw something flicker there, a question, maybe, or a recognition. "I believe you will," he said. Then he was gone, swept away by the tide of palace life, leaving her standing alone in the rain with soggy papers and a strange feeling in her chest. The Uganda negotiations changed everything. For 3 weeks, they worked side by side in a fortified compound outside Kampala. Amara translated not just words, but cultural context, emotional undertones, unspoken meanings. She watched June transform from the rigid prince she'd seen in Seoul into something more complex. He listened to the resistance leaders with genuine attention. He asked questions about their families, their histories, their hopes beyond the conflict. He was trying, she realized, to find a way to honor his duty to the empire while minimizing harm. It was impossible, of course. The empire demanded submission, not negotiation. But she admired him for trying. Late one night, after a particularly difficult session, she found him alone on the compound's roof, staring out at the city lights. She should have left him to his privacy. Instead, she heard herself asking, "Do you ever wonder if it's worth it?" He turned, startled. For a moment, she thought he would reprimand her for the impertinence, but then he laughed, a tired, sad sound. "Every single day," he said. She moved closer, stood beside him. The night air was warm, filled with the sounds of distant music and traffic, so different from Seoul's ordered calm. "Then why do you do it?" "Because if I don't, someone worse will. My father has 3 other sons. 2 of them think compassion is weakness. If I step aside, thousands more will die." He paused. "That's what I tell myself anyway. Some nights I'm not sure I believe it anymore." She should have offered some platitude, some reassurance. Instead, she told him the truth. "My mother was killed in one of your empire's expansions into Kenya. I was 8. The soldiers said it was necessary, that resistance couldn't be tolerated. For 15 years, I've hated the empire, hated everyone who serves it." She took a breath. "But watching you these past weeks, I don't know what to feel anymore." The silence between them was heavy with confession. Finally, he said quietly, "I'm sorry. For your mother. For all of it. I can't undo what the empire has done. But I can try to make what comes next less brutal. That's all I have." "Maybe that's enough," she whispered. That was the night everything changed. Not because they kissed, they didn't, not yet. But because they had spoken true things to each other in the darkness, and truth creates a bond stronger than physical touch. The Uganda negotiations eventually collapsed. The empire sent in troops. June did what he could to minimize civilian casualties, but hundreds still died. Amara watched from the sidelines, translating surrender terms, watching families torn apart, and felt her heart break along fault lines she didn't know existed. When they returned to Seoul, something had shifted between them. They found excuses to work together. Late nights reviewing documents became conversations about philosophy, about justice, about the weight of inherited power. He told her about growing up in the palace, about the loneliness of being groomed for empire, about the day he realized his father saw him as a weapon rather than a son. She told him about her grandmother's stories of pre-colonial Africa, about choosing to work for the empire because survival sometimes meant swallowing your pride, about the complicated shame of being good at serving the people who destroyed your world. Before we continue with what happens next, if you're loving this story of forbidden love and hidden truths, hit that subscribe button right now. We share stories like this every week, tales of love that defies empires, secrets that change everything, and revenge that's sweeter than you can imagine. And drop a comment below telling us, where are you watching from? Are you Team Amara, or do you think June had a point? Let us know. The first time he kissed her, they were in the palace archives at 2 a.m. She had made a joke she couldn't even remember what about, and he had laughed. Really laughed, and then suddenly his hand was on her cheek and his lips were on hers, and the world tilted sideways. They pulled apart, breathing hard. "This is dangerous," he said. "I know. My father would never accept it. The court would destroy you. The empire." "I know," she said again. Then she kissed him back. For 3 months, they lived in stolen moments. Secret meetings in forgotten corners of the palace. Coded messages hidden in official documents. The intensity of forbidden love mixed with the constant terror of discovery. He told her he was trying to find a way, that he would speak to his father, that love should matter more than tradition. She wanted to believe him, but she had learned long ago that empires didn't care about love. Then she discovered the documents. She hadn't been snooping. She was simply filing reports in June's private office when a folder slipped from a high shelf, spilling papers across the floor. At first, the words didn't make sense. Strategic plans for African integration phase 3. lists of resistance leaders marked for elimination, her own name circled in red with a note in the margins, useful for now. Dispose after Nairobi operation complete. Her blood turned to ice. The handwriting was June's. She read the documents 3 times, hoping she had misunderstood, that her Korean wasn't good enough, that there was some other explanation, but the meaning was clear. The Empire was planning a massive assault on East African resistance movements. And June wasn't just aware of it, he was leading it. Every gentle word he'd spoken about minimizing harm, every promise to find a better way, had been a lie. She was simply a tool to help him understand the enemy he planned to crush. The note about her was dated from 2 weeks before their first kiss. She managed to leave his office without breaking down, managed to walk through the palace corridors with her face composed, made it to her small apartment in the servants' quarters before the tears came. She cried for her mother, for her own stupidity, for believing that the crown prince of an empire built on blood could ever see her as anything more than a useful resource. Then she dried her eyes and made a decision. If the Empire wanted to use her, two could play that game. Amara began to gather intelligence. She had access to palace documents, to private conversations, to strategic plans. She photographed everything she could. The names of resistance leaders the Empire planned to assassinate, the dates of planned attacks, the locations of secret prisons. All of it went into encrypted files she uploaded to secure servers whenever she could access unsecured internet terminals. She continued her relationship with June, letting him believe she suspected nothing. It felt like swallowing glass every time he touched her, every time he whispered words of love into her hair. But she smiled and kissed him back and thought about all the people she might save by playing this role a little longer. She started making contact with resistance networks, carefully, anonymously, through encrypted channels. She offered information. At first, they didn't trust her. Why would they? But when her intelligence proved accurate, when attacks were prevented and leaders escaped capture, they began to listen. That's how she met Marcus. He was Kenyan, a resistance commander operating across East Africa. Their first meeting was in a safe house in Seoul's underground, a place where the Empire's cameras couldn't reach. He was younger than she expected, maybe 30, with scars on his hands and fire in his eyes. "You're sleeping with the Crown Prince," he said bluntly. It wasn't a question. "I'm gathering intelligence. Do you love him?" She wanted to say no. The word stuck in her throat. "It doesn't matter what I feel. What matters is stopping what's coming." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "The African Liberation Front is planning something big. A coordinated uprising across 6 territories simultaneously. The Empire won't be able to crush all of us at once. But we need more intelligence troop movements, communication protocols, vulnerabilities in their command structure. I can get that. It will be dangerous. If they catch you, they killed my mother," she said. "Danger is relative." He nodded slowly. "There's something else you should know. We have intelligence suggesting there is a faction within the Korean military that's sympathetic to our cause. Officers who are tired of endless expansion, who want the Empire to focus on consolidation rather than conquest. If we could make contact with them, that's impossible. The Empire's military is loyal to the core." "Is it?" Marcus leaned forward. "Your prince, does he seem like a man who loves what he's doing? Or does he seem like someone trapped?" The question haunted her. She thought about June's tired eyes, his midnight confessions, the way he sometimes looked at his father with something that might have been hate. But then she remembered the documents with her name circled, the plans for mass arrest, the cold efficiency of imperial strategy. "He's the Iron Tiger," she said. "He's the Empire's most loyal weapon. Maybe. Or maybe he's something else." Think about it. Over the following weeks, Amara walked a razor's edge. She continued feeding intelligence to the resistance while maintaining her relationship with June. The psychological strain was enormous. Some nights she would wake up gasping, unsure which version of herself was real, the woman who loved the prince, or the spy working to destroy everything he represented. Then came the night that changed everything again. Can you believe what just happened? If this story is making your heart race, do us a huge favor, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload. We want to know, what moment so far has left you absolutely breathless? Was it when Amara discovered those documents with her name circled? Tell us in the comments which part made you gasp out loud. We read every single comment. June arrived at her apartment unannounced, his face pale, his hands shaking. She had never seen him like this, the composed prince reduced to something raw and desperate. "I need to show you something," he said. He pulled out his personal tablet, hands trembling as he unlocked it. "I found these in my father's private files. He doesn't know I have access." He turned the screen toward her. "I need you to tell me I'm misunderstanding, that my Korean is failing me, that this means something other than what I think it means." Amara looked at the documents. They were orders for what the Empire called the African Solution, a plan for systematic elimination of resistance leadership followed by installation of puppet governments. But that wasn't what made her breath stop. It was the smaller document beneath it, a personal memo from the Emperor to his military command. Crown Prince Lee Jun has become emotionally compromised regarding African territories. His recent recommendations for reduced force and diplomatic solutions indicate dangerous ideological drift. After the Nairobi operation, he will be reassigned to administrative duties indefinitely. If he resists, consider him a security risk to be handled accordingly. Her mind reeled. Your father is planning to remove you from command. It's worse than that. June's voice cracked. Look at the date on that memo. It was written 5 months ago, before Uganda. Before any of this. He's been planning to sideline me for months. And the Nairobi operation, he stopped, swallowed hard. The Nairobi operation is designed to fail. It's a trap, not for the resistance. For me. My father wants me to lead an assault that will turn into a massacre, something so brutal in public that he'll have justification to declare me unfit for command. Maybe worse. Amara's hands were numb. Why are you showing me this? Because I'm done. The words came out fierce, broken. I'm done being his weapon. I'm done pretending that loyalty to the Empire matters more than basic humanity. I'm done sacrificing my soul for a legacy of blood. He grabbed her hands. Come with me. We'll run, disappear. I don't care about the throne, about my title. I just want to be free of this. She stared at him. This was the moment, the perfect opportunity. She could convince him to defect completely, to bring his knowledge and strategic brilliance to the resistance. The crown prince of the Korean Empire turning against his own father, it would be a propaganda victory beyond measure. But looking at his desperate eyes, she found herself asking, why me? Why trust me with this? Because you're the only person in this entire empire who sees me as human instead of a symbol. Because when I'm with you, I remember there's more to life than duty and conquest. Because I love you. The words hit her like a physical blow. She had heard him say them before, but this felt different. This was a man stripping away every defense, offering his whole broken heart, and she had to destroy it. June, she said carefully, there's something I need to tell you too. She told him everything, about the documents she'd found months ago, about her work with the resistance, about Marcus and the planned uprising, about every lie she'd told, every moment of intimacy she'd used for intelligence gathering. She watched his face change as she spoke, confusion giving way to betrayal, betrayal hardening into something colder. When she finished, the silence was suffocating. So none of it was real, he said finally. His voice was flat, emptied of emotion. Everything between us, just espionage. At first, she admitted. But then what? You decided the weapon deserved a conscience? How generous? That's not fair. Fair? He laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fairness? I just offered to give up my entire life for you. I was ready to become a traitor to the only world I've ever known. And you've been using me as an intelligence source this whole time. You used me first. The words exploded out of her. I saw that document. Useful for now. Dispose after Nairobi operation complete. Was that part of the seduction strategy? Make the translator fall in love so she'd be more cooperative? He froze. You saw that. Yes. He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. That wasn't about you. That note was about another asset, a local informant we were using in Lagos. Your name was on that page because you were CC'd on the translation request. The note wasn't about you. The world tilted. What? I would never. His voice broke. Amara, I fell in love with you in Uganda. Every moment since then has been real for me. Terrifyingly, stupidly real. I've been trying to find a way to protect you, to keep you safe from my father, from the court, from all of it. That's why I've been delayed implementing Phase 3. I've been sabotaging my own orders, trying to buy time to figure out how to get you out safely. She felt like she was falling. You've been sabotaging the Empire for months. Small things, delays, lost documents, strategic miscommunications. I thought I was being clever. Turns out my father noticed. He laughed bitterly. We're both traitors then? Just in opposite directions? They stared at each other across the small room. Both betrayers, both betrayed, both trapped in a web they'd helped weave. What do we do now? She whispered. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went white. We need to leave, right now. My father knows I accessed his files. Security is coming. Where do we go? I don't know. But if they catch us together, he grabbed her hand. Please. Whatever you believe about me, whatever I've done, please trust me for the next 5 minutes. That's all I ask. She looked at his extended hand. Thought about her mother, about Marcus, about all the reasons she should let him face the consequences alone. Then she thought about his confession on that rooftop in Uganda, about the way he'd tried to negotiate rather than slaughter, about the man beneath the crown who had been fighting the same battle she was, just from the other side. She took his hand. They ran through the palace corridors like fugitives, which they were. June knew every hidden passage, every unmonitored route. They made it to the outer walls before the alarms began to sound. The city of Seoul spread before them, glittering and dangerous. I know a place, Amara said. The Resistance safe house. Marcus will help us. You want me to walk into a Resistance stronghold? They'll kill me on sight. Not if I'm with you. Not if you have intelligence to offer. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Lead the way. The safe house was in the industrial district, hidden among warehouses and shipping containers. Marcus answered the door with a gun in his hand. His eyes widened when he saw June. Have you lost your mind? He hissed at Amara. The Empire is about to launch Phase 3, June said before she could respond. Full military assault on 6 African territories simultaneously. I have the complete operational plans, troop movements, communications protocols, everything you need to counter it. But we need to move fast. They'll change everything once they realize I've defected. Marcus stared at him. Why would you give us this? Because I'm tired of being my father's executioner. Because the woman I love has more courage in her smallest finger than I have in my entire body. Because maybe there's a third option beyond conquest or chaos, something that looks like actual peace, June met his eyes steadily. I know who I am. I know what I've done. I don't expect forgiveness, but let me help stop what's coming. After that, you can do whatever you want with me. We're almost at the end, but before we reveal how this all concludes, if you've been on this emotional journey with us, show some love by subscribing. This channel is all about stories that make you feel something real Forbidden's love, impossible choices, and the courage to choose your heart over everything else. Comment below. Did this story remind you of anything from your own life? What would you have done in Amara's position? And where in the world are you watching from? Let's build a community of story lovers together. The next 72 hours were a blur of strategic planning. June laid out the Empire's entire operational structure. Marcus coordinated with resistance cells across the continent. Amara translated, mediated, helped bridge the vast gap between a prince learning to be a revolutionary and fighters learning to trust their former enemy. The uprising, when it came, was more coordinated than anything the Empire had faced before. Resistance forces struck at precisely calibrated moments, disrupting supply lines, capturing key installations, evacuating civilian populations before the Empire's forces could respond. It wasn't a complete victory. Too much blood had been spilled over too many years for that, but it was enough. Enough to force the Emperor to negotiate. Enough to create space for something new. June's defection became public knowledge. The Empire declared him a traitor, stripped him of his titles, declared him an enemy of the state. His father gave a speech calling him a cancer that had to be excised. His brothers vowed to hunt him down personally. He watched the broadcast in the safe house, his face expressionless. When it ended, he turned to Amara. No going back now. Did you want to go back? No. He said it without hesitation. Everything I had there was built on suffering. I'd rather be nobody and free than a prince in a golden cage. But freedom, they discovered, was complicated. The African Liberation Front didn't fully trust June, and probably never would. He had commanded armies that had killed their friends, their families. His tactical brilliance was useful, but every day he had to prove himself again. Some called for his execution as a war criminal. Others wanted to use him as a puppet, a symbol to parade in front of cameras. Very few saw him simply as a person. Amara stayed by his side through all of it. Even when Marcus pulled her aside and asked if she was sure, if she understood what she was giving up by standing with the Empire's former prince. He's not the prince anymore, she said. He's just June. And yes, I'm sure, the negotiations between the Empire and the Liberation Front took months. Eventually, a fragile peace was established. Not friendship, not unity, but an agreement to stop the worst of the bloodshed. The Empire withdrew from certain territories. Resistance forces agreed to cease attacks in others. It was messy, imperfect, and nobody was fully satisfied, which probably meant it was the best they could hope for. June and Amara didn't return to Seoul. They couldn't. He was still wanted as a traitor, and she had burned every bridge with the Empire. Instead, they found a small apartment in Nairobi, in the neighborhood where Amara's mother had lived before the wars. It was strange, building a life from nothing. June, who had never cooked a meal or washed his own clothes, learning the mundane details of ordinary existence. Amara, who had spent so long being small and invisible, learning to take up space again. They thought sometimes about his past, about her secrets, about the impossible situation they'd navigated and the wounds that still hadn't healed. But they also laughed, cooked meals together, walked through markets holding hands, found small moments of peace in the wreckage. Marcus visited one evening, 6 months after the peace accords were signed. He found them on their balcony, watching the sunset paint the city gold. There's been a development, he said. The Emperor died 2 days ago. Heart attack. His eldest son was taking the throne, the one who wanted to expand the wars, not end them. The peace is going to be tested. June's face was carefully neutral. Who told you this? Officers inside the Imperial military who still have contact with you. They're asking if you'd consider returning. There's a faction that wants you on the throne instead. They say you're the only one who can prevent the Empire from tearing itself apart. Silence. Then Amara said, "That's not his fight anymore, isn't it?" Marcus looked at June. "How many will die if your brother takes full power? How much progress will be lost?" "I can't go back," June said quietly. "I won't. That world broke me once. I won't give it the chance to do it again, even if it means millions more suffering." It was Amara who answered. He spent his entire life sacrificing himself for other people's wars. Let him rest. Let him be human. The Empire will find its own way, or it won't, but he's done being their savior or their scapegoat. Marcus nodded slowly. "I had to ask, but I understand." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you two make sense together. You're both trying to be better than the worlds that made you. That's rare." After he left, they sat in silence, watching darkness spread across the city. Finally, June said, "Do you ever regret it, choosing this? Choosing me?" Amara thought about everything they'd lost, everything they'd given up. Her career, his throne, the certainty of their old lives. Then she thought about the blade at her throat in that rebel stronghold, the moment she had truly understood that love could be both the greatest risk and the only thing worth risking everything for. "Every day," she said honestly, "and not once." "Both things are true." He pulled her closer. They stayed there as the stars emerged, two people who had betrayed empires for each other, finding something like peace in the ruins. The world kept turning. The Empire and the Liberation Front continued their uneasy dance towards something that might someday look like justice. And in a small apartment in Nairobi, a former prince and a former spy built a life that belonged only to themselves, flawed, complicated, and fiercely free. The blade had been at her throat. She had survived. And somehow, against all probability, she had found a way to live.